And who needs Alan Moore when we have Commie Mark?
Огонь на подавление! Враг сзади по левому флангу! Огонь! Прочь! Они...
Assalamu alaikum, bitches. It's me, your man, Commie Mark, your friendly neighborhood communist. Special guest this week. I can't believe that he even agreed, to come on. It's mind-blowing. I want to just take a moment to recognize, what a strange and interesting timeline this is where this interview happens. That, I'm just a shit-posting communist comic book creator, and the guest this week is, an actual serious person, like a journalist who is most known for exposing the devious behavior of alphabet agencies around the world and stuff, real serious things. And we moved in very different circles, but we're both interested in the power of propaganda, and how the elites use it to manipulate us with the mainstream media. And there's going to be a lot of symmetries and overlaps that I'm looking forward to talking to. I'm looking forward to talking to him about. So let's just get him out here already. Welcome to the show, the Grey Zone UK editor, Klarenberg. Hello.
Yes. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you. Like I was saying, it blows my mind that we're having this conversation. I follow you on Twitter, obviously, and I've read a lot of your articles, over the years or whatever. But a few months ago, I don't know if you remember this, because it would have been a nothing for you. It would have just been a Tuesday or whatever. You retweeted this tweet from someone about this new ski resort in North Korea. And I have a comic book series about West Korea, about Kim Il-sung, and it's an alternate history story where the Koreans win the war. Anyway, I replied to this it's called Best Korea for a reason. To which you then replied, "It's the best," and that was a moment for me, because in this community where I am hanging around, the people who are my fans, they do a mock voice of me, they'll go, "Oh, Commie Mark," and I read it in that voice. It was that you was doing the mocking Commie Mark voice. Whatever.
Yes. Well, no, I wasn't trying to mock you. It was just a genuine opinion. But yeah, no. It's. I think resistance can often make strange bedfellows, we're seeing this all over the place now, particularly with the war in Palestine, which has made me kind of digitally break bread with people I otherwise would think were appalling. There we are.
Like I have a largely right-wing audience, despite being like the most openly communist person that you're going to see on YouTube. Like, and that's because, you know, I'm a free speech absolutist, and I'm opposed to intersectionality. You know, like class solidarity is the answer to that problem. Stuff like that. So yeah, you're right. And the war in Palestine has done a great job of blackpilling a lot of like liberal SJWs, like who's I've seen them reacting to like you know, imagine a tweet that's like, oh, the IDF supports gay people. There was two people who proposed to each other, two men, like IDF guys, and you know, these SJW types for the first time were like, oh, they're just using gayness like tokenistically, like in the way that, you know, other people have been trying to explain to them that that's what's going on all along. You know, corporations don't really care about gay people, they care about pink pounds. I mean. So the first question that we always ask guests on the show is this one.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I mean, formally, yes. In the UK, I was a member of, and I was tied to a number of communist organisations, and I'm extremely proud of that. Yeah, I mean, I think that living where I do now, the politics is very, very, very different here. And so, like, you have the socialist Yugoslavia was very, very, very different to both to the capitalist West, but also to the Soviet Union. And so, I think that actually there's an enormous amount of people who would not even consider themselves left who hold positions which are cherished by by communist parties. But yeah, it's not something I would ever try and hide.
No, we usually ask that question. Usually the guests like right wing, like you know, because those are the people who will talk to me. So like I don't really have a good answer for when you say yeah, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, remember, it's a kind of Groucho Marx aspect of like I wouldn't be a member of any club that would have me as a member, perhaps, but.
Got some comments in the chat already. Marmik says, may this chat be a NAFO free zone. I did consider like tagging them in. That I know that they use hashtag NAFO Article 5, you know, to summon backup or whatever. You know, their version of Avengers Assemble. Or
Yes.
Jabba the Cook says, Comic Mark is appalling. Thank you. And Ben says, Comic has fans. Well, I choose to believe that they're my fans when they're mocking me.
It's a sign of affection, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the culture that I'm building here. So if you are new to the show because you're watching because Kit is here, then, you know, please like and subscribe, obviously. But like I will warn you that, you know, I am a comic book guy, and we're going to talk about like serious things like they involve people like dying and stuff, and then I'm gonna like childishly drag it back down to how it applies to me and the comic book landscape. But there is overlaps, like we will see some, trust me, it's a thing. So let me get my slideshow thing ready for you. So I got you here because I wanted to talk about NAFO, right?
Yes.
Like, that was the pretext that you agreed to do the show. And it's very interesting. Like, I'm all about meme warfare and stuff. Like, my show is literally called Russian Troll Factory. Like, and every week on the show, you know, like we do like a troll at the end, or we're supposed to, when I remember, you know, like leave a movie review that's a joke, or like some Google, like we did an episode where we went to North Korea on Google Maps, Like, and while they don't have street view, they have a lot of like, you know, those 360-degree panoramic photos.
Yes.
So, you know, we did like a nice little tour of North Korea, and we went to the zoo, like where they had a dog painted as a panda or something like that. I can't remember. There was some ridiculous thing there. And, you know, we left TripAdvisor reviews like for all of the places and stuff. Funny. I think, at least. So we are going to talk about that. But first, I wanted to ask you about the Grey Zone, right? Wikipedia describes it as a far-left news website, and they were accused this week in the Washington Post of being on the payroll of Iran. Like, you have a comment about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like that Wikipedia page, whoever's editing it, and the now notorious Wikipedia editor Philip Cross appears to be responsible for a lot of it. Whoever is editing it really doesn't want them reading us under any circumstances. And we were at one stage referred to as a far left and far right publication. That only lasted a few hours. But yeah, like we are subject to like pretty much relentless attacks in the mainstream. A lot of it is concerned with trying to get us prosecuted under a variety of laws. I myself, when I returned to the UK for the very last time, I've been living abroad for a number of years, I was stopped by counter-terror police and detained and interrogated for a very, 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 very long time. It was like 6 hours. And they fingerprinted me and DNA swabbed me and asked me all sorts of invasive questions about my finances and my personal and professional relationships, and a lot of questions about whether I have any relationship at all with the FSB, which is Russia's security organization. So yeah, I mean, this is to kind of be expected, because there is this very bizarre, very, very, very bizarre and uniquely British phenomenon to assume that anyone who is opposed to British imperialism is working for the Russians. And like we in the 1980s, the CND, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, they were comprehensively infiltrated by British agents, because it was assumed that all of these well-meaning grannies who were opposing nukes on American soil, on British soil, were actually secretly agents of the Kremlin. And that sort of thing. So it's something that we have to put up with. It's amusing to a degree. It's also like you're not really funny when, you know, quote unquote, very serious people are calling for your prosecution and jailing. But such are the dangers of opposing US power.
Yeah, absolutely. So I heard you. There's so much to unpack just in that paragraph or whatever.
Sure.
Again, we have the same kind of things over here. You know, the bias of Wikipedia, like how difficult it is, the stranglehold of information, like that group has. Like, it's, you know, once a narrative has been decided, like about your group or whatever, it's very difficult to challenge that. The people who write it are the ones who get to decide what changes are made. Seems dumb. Like, that's one thing. Oh, so the police detention thing. So I heard you speak about this at some level. So, you know, like when you're on the plane and it's the moment when they say like, okay, everyone get your passports ready, like, you know, because we need to check them.
Yes.
And you look around and you see that there's no like terroristy looking Muslim passengers, and there's no 70s British radio DJs like on the plane. And that little voice like whispers in your ear like, oh shit, they're coming for me. Like, in that moment, like, did you consider the possibility that you would be Khashoggi'd or whatever? Like, did that enter your mind? Or Like,
well, I mean, it was like, I mean, as we were approaching Luton Airport, which is, you know, like unashamedly like one of the worst, the worst airport in the world. The pilot came on the tannoy and said, "Can everyone have your documents ready for inspection because there was a team of border police waiting on the tarmac." And then you pull in and you see this like kind of very large group of like armed officers. Part of me like really wanted to think maybe it's this new kind of redesign of the airport. And you know that actually they haven't come for me, but there was you know, I knew very well in my heart and soul that yes, that they were explicitly there for me. I had the previous summer been invited, quote unquote, under threat of arrest to attend an interview with a senior detective in London because of my reporting on Paul Mason's leaked emails. So it was to be expected. I obviously hadn't prepared for it at all, though, and so when they started checking everyone's IDs, the second they saw my name, there was this rather gruff Northern Ireland accented cop. We can imagine
the kind of scariest.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You can imagine exactly what he's been getting up to over his career for the British. Yeah, that I was escorted in and then told, yes, you have no right to silence, you have no right to privacy, you have to answer everything that we ask, and if you don't like that, we're going to arrest you, and you have to hand over all of your digital device passcodes and diagrams and that sort of thing, and my SIM card passwords. What they got all this stuff, I don't know. But like, yeah, I found it kind of surreal at the time, and there was part of me that thought it was kind of amusing that like little old me was the subject of such like targeted state harassment. You know, I might add as well that I've spoken to a number of people, including Craig Murray, the former UK ambassador to Uzbekistan, who exposed British and American complicity and torture in the country. Or was it Kazakhstan? I forget. But he and everyone else I've spoken to who's been stopped under these powers, they were told they were being detained while going through passport control. They didn't have a team of officers waiting for them. So I mean, they really didn't want any risk of me getting out of there, or perhaps to their mind concealing or destroying evidence before they got to me. They wanted me right from arrival. It was quite traumatizing. I was nonetheless heartened by the hugely negative backlash against this happening, and I had many people, including people who I would not consider kind of comrades, who like sprang to my defense. There were like celebrities like Reginald D. Hunter, that US comedian, who were like tweeting about this and saying it was absolutely disgraceful, which it was. And yeah, like, so that was quite heartening. I am allegedly, according to the police, still under criminal investigation, but I've heard nothing from them. Whether that's a good sign or a bad one, I don't know. I won't be returning to the UK anytime soon, though, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I saw at the time that I was going to say, getting arrested by or getting detained by UK counter-terror police is way cooler than the British Transport Police.
Yes,
that's what that was supposed to set up. The British Transport Police is the lamest division, only because there isn't like a police division or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's like, I mean, I think that the British Transport Police, because they have such a limited role, and they are this incestuous singular division, I think they're probably a lot more, actually a lot more upper tier than regular police forces. They have this kind of this chip on their shoulder, and this kind of this ambition to be important.
And I just realized in that moment, because of how like messed up the world is now, that we'd just glossed over the whole counter-terror, no right to silence, like all of that stuff, like things that, you know, you should be enshrined in, you should be protected by, and it like because they didn't arrest you, you don't have the rights that you would get for being arrested, and it like
Yeah. It's just quite remarkable because like this law, the powers I was stopped under, I think it's called the Counterterrorism and Border Security Act in 2019. Now, the UN at the time said that this was really Orwellian and it can convict people of thought crime because it is effectively suspicionless. And there was all of this language in it, which this was contained in a bit of paper handed to me helpfully during my interrogation, which stated, well, yes, that you are not under arrest. So therefore, you do not have the same rights that you would if you were under arrest, i.e. you don't have a right to silence, which at one stage, Britain effectively invented the right to silence. And at one stage, it was enforced so heavily that suspects in criminal trials were prohibited from testifying in their own defense because it was considered uncouth and ungentlemanly, the idea that someone's words could and would be used against them. We're obviously very far from that now. But the other language contained in this, which is just absolutely astonishing. It claims that someone can be working for a hostile power or like engaged in a conspiracy with a hostile power to harm Britain's interests without them or the hostile power knowing. So, I mean, it's quite some conspiracy, isn't it, when the conspirators don't know they're conspiring? And like, I mean, it's just it's flabbergasting, and people, particularly in the US, which for all of its infinite faults, like it does have very, very, very well cemented legal protections. Whether they're upheld or not is a different matter. But for civilians, particularly around speech. And like the response in the US, and I gather from a source that there were people within the Department of Homeland Security who were very critical of me being stopped in this manner. Who, that kind of very vague universal wording, it crops up repeatedly in a bit of legislation I've written about for the Grey Zone called the National Security Act. Its terms are so broad and vague that people are almost going to inevitably break the law without wanting to, without knowing, without intending to. So, for instance, a lot of it creates all of these new criminal offences around assisting foreign powers, and it states again, similar to this counter-terror legislation that I was stopped under. Well, people can be furthering a hostile state's interests without us needing to identify what hostile state it is. And also we can convict people for receiving quote unquote material benefits from hostile foreign powers, even when we can't link what they've received to something they've said or done in service of this foreign power. Now, this very much strikes me as it's like they've kind of created this infinite tripwire whereby anyone can be convicted of pretty much anything if they decide to go after them. It's just like it's just completely vast, unprecedented powers in European and British legal history, and we are already seeing some people being prosecuted under it. The terms have not been released due to quote unquote national security. I think it will be very interesting when the details of these trials emerge, because I am absolutely convinced, and I wrote about this at the time, that people sharing the wrong opinions on social media could end up in the dock over this. Because, well, we hear a lot about further, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, we hear a lot about how people can unwittingly, quote unquote, further Russian disinformation narratives by calling the Ukraine war a proxy war, not sticking to the line that it's this unprovoked act of aggression by Russia against plucky, innocent Ukraine. So, as I say, I'm fairly sure that when the details start emerging, it's going to be very, very, very farcical what these people have done. All the more reason to never come back to the UK ever again.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense for you to do that. Yes, and again, this is another example where we have a similar trajectory, though here in the, I always say, class warrior fighting a culture war in it. Over here, we have a similarly vague law that can be used to prosecute anybody for causing offense, and even when the offense is unintended, or doesn't actually have to cause offense, just could potentially cause offense or whatever.
Alarm, defense, distress.
Which brings me to the point that I was going to earlier. So the National Union of Journalists like stood up for you, and then my understanding is that they changed their mind like a day later or something like that.
Yeah.
And for me, like I've been over here in this sort of right-wing circle banging on about cancel culture and freedom of speech and stuff, because I think that it's important to stand up for those guys who are being the victims of it currently, because eventually the pendulum is going to swing the other way. And, I would like somebody to come and defend me in that situation. And
it's very, that's a very sensible principle that the people just like continually forget. And it's just like, like I said, I had a lot of people speak up for me after I got stopped, with whom I couldn't disagree more, with whom I in some cases had very bitter public spats with on Twitter or been blocked by, and they still did, and that meant a lot, because the fact is we're all in this together. Now there is that famous quote, which is what would you do? What would you do to catch the devil? Well, I'd tear down every law in England. And to which the response is, well, who would you turn to if the devil turned around on you and every law in England has been turned down? And like, this is a very basic principle which is consistently forgotten. Like when Donald Trump got banned from Twitter at the start of 2021, there were a large number of people, not just kind of establishment bootlicking, shit-eating Democrat ultras, but there were people on the radical anti-imperialist left who were cheering this and were very quick to rebut any suggestion this raised free speech issues. And then mere weeks later, there was a massive purge of left-wing accounts on Twitter, and this is the blueprint. This is the strategy. You go after undesirable elements who are kind of objectively unsavory or say terrible things, and then you distract everyone with that, and then go after average people or people possessed of radical perspectives, and then in the hubbub and confusion and just general fray that often gets missed. And overwhelmingly, while the prominent scalps of major social media purges are people like Alex Jones, that's the prominent side. The overwhelming majority of people who get purged are anti-empire, anti-war, anti-police. They get silenced, and then there's no pushback. Often because the people who would usually push back have been purged themselves, and it will carry on like this. And I got banned from the free speech app X, as Twitter is now known, back in February for jousting with Zionists. I forgot that the maxim, much like wrestling why you should never wrestle a chimney sweep, because you won't walk away clean. I got banned for that. It was far from clear that I would ever be reinstated. I was given conflicting information on if and when I would be back, and then I was finally reinstated after 3 months of being in Twitter jail. And it's like, again, I saw a lot of people speak up for me. I saw a lot of people justify the fact that I was removed. It's quite worrying that there is such an infrastructure to justify and palliate and validate like these things happening. But that is their role.
Yeah, they're using they're weaponizing the apparatus of cancel culture, like that they've baked into the people now, and it's like you said, you can point to Alex Jones or Nick Fuentes and say, "Oh, but we need to stop those bad guys," and that justifies stopping everyone. The real issue is I could live with the rules if they were totalitarianly enforced, equally on everyone, but they're not, are they? The rules are selectively used to go after.
Yeah, which I might add as well, that, I mean, while I was gone, I mentioned a lot of people spoke up for me, and there was this huge smear campaign against me by Zionists after I got removed, claiming that I was calling for genocide against Jews, and I'm this rabid anti-Semite. Which, I mean, if anyone actually knows my personal and professional background, they will understand how utterly ludicrous that is. But anyway, several people while I was in jail, in Twitter terms, were tweeting at Elon Musk examples of people openly calling for another Holocaust and posting like really repulsive, like anti-Semitic material, and they're not punished. They get like hundreds, if not thousands, of likes in some instances, and like there's no consequences or accountability for that. I have speculated in the past, Musk is a Pentagon contractor who's very like heavily wired into the CIA and the Zionist lobby, and you do have to wonder whether his encouragement of people to say anything they like on Twitter is an effort to effectively create an archive of incriminating information on people, which can then be used against them in a court of law.
Yeah, that's a interesting perspective. Because I think it's very obvious and apparent that Elon Musk made a lot of money from the government, and it's definitely friends with them, like at the very least. So, but we're supposed to talk about NAFO.
Let's get into that. Our friends.
So it stands for the North Atlantic Fellows Association. And if we took them at their own word, they would describe themselves as like an organic internet meme and social media group that counters Russian disinformation and engaging in information warfare and raising money for the Ukrainian war. That's what they'd say. That's how they describe themselves. And my initial impression, like upon seeing this, was that this was, a combination of your classic blue-haired SJW virtue signalers and Facebook wine moms and, fat former military dudes or whatever, all larking around, like thinking they're having an effect on the war.
Precisely.
But, if I found, if you dig a little deeper than that, it's quite a bit more nefarious, underneath. Or at least that's what I'm seeing suggested. Would you offer a different definition of what NAFO is?
No, I think that you've put it very eloquently, actually, and like it's spot on. Is that, I mean, there was a poll recently that were asked. It was a NAFO poll on Twitter. Someone asked, if you're a fella, how old are you? And overwhelmingly, people said they were like in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. There's a bunch of bored people with massive hard-ons for military action who think that they are contributing somehow to Ukraine's war effort by posting infantile memes. There is something much more insidious to it, though, which is that that NATO for many years has been seeking to weaponize memes and doxing and cyber stalking and the typical things in which NATO routinely engages. And so there are a number of open white papers that have been published by NATO in recent years, openly talking about this. And there is a very interesting example of this. It was called Stratcom Laugh. Stratcom meaning strategic communications, information warfare, and it's effectively. It was released in May 2021, and it's been endorsed by the Ukrainian government because it's the supposed benefits of propagandistic humor is that they make, quote unquote, perception less critical. Humor uses common context to convey messages with which an audience agrees. Everything is simplified to the obvious. It creates clear groups, strong and intelligent we, and clumsy and stupid they. Of course, the audience associates itself with the former and begins to despise the latter. Simplified, managed understanding is easily disseminated by an audience and creates the necessary social context for propagandists. So, like, the next time that you see some infantile, like, NAFO meme about Vatniks, bear in mind that this is the product of a multi-year and probably lavishly funded NATO push specifically in order to weaponize social media. Which is, I mean, it's just, it's unsurprising, but also, like, deeply disturbing. And I think that that excerpt from the quote I just read, where they talk about creating clear groups, strong and intelligent we, and clumsy and stupid they, this has been the strategy of Western propagandists since the war and the proxy war in Ukraine began. And there's a number of prominent, formerly blue check Twitter users that I keep an eye on, because I think they're a very good, their output is a very good indicator of what they are being told to say publicly by the CIA and MI6 and NATO. And from day one, the narrative was that this was deeply embarrassing for the proxy war. I mean, was like deeply embarrassing for Russia. You know, highlight failure, highlight ineptitude, just really, really drive the point home that the Russians are this bunch of bumbling, thuggish, idiotic orcs, therefore not only dehumanizing them and, you know, getting people to cheer for their murder, but also, yes, like, framing this narrative that, like, the plucky, ingenious, innovative Ukrainians can pull off this stunning David and Goliath victory, which has the obvious, the convenient upshot of getting a lot of people on board with keeping this grinding, unsustainably bloody and costly conflict just continuing on. And I think, I mean, to give you an example as well, you know, I mentioned the next time you see a NATO meme, there is one of the NATO reports that I summarize in my investigation for Minpress into weaponization of humour by NATO. It was written by this longtime British Ministry of Defence apparatchik called Keir Giles, who, funnily enough, it states in the report that he briefly tried to earn a living as a stand-up comedian, so knows what it feels like when a joke falls flat, which is, I think, it tells you a lot. But I mean, he's also previously written apologies for, like, Baltic state Nazi collaborators, claiming they're like misunderstood. And they were actually, again, you know, plucky underdogs who were facing off against the Soviet Union rather than, you know, Jew murdering fascists. He has repeatedly promoted the output of a dedicated parody account of none other than me, which is ingeniously called Tit Klarenberg, and it has done things like, I would urge people to go and look at this and what this account posts. You know, I would have found the output, like, funny if it was actually remotely amusing. I mean, you know, I'm very much up for self-mockery, as anyone who actually knows me well appreciates.
That's baked into being a British person, that is.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a uniquely British thing, I think, at least among the working class, and so yeah, this account has, among other things, like, mocked the victims of sexual abuse and dabbled in anti-Semitism, calling Max Blumenthal, my editor, and I like self-hating Jews, and it's also it posted at one stage how funny it was that my name rhymed with so many offensive things, and it resulted in me being bullied at school, and this is why I'm such a twisted human being. I mean, like mocking a child for getting bullied over their name. I mean, like, this is the kind of level of sophistication and quote unquote humor that these people peddle out, and it's like that NATO report authored by Keir Giles, it explicitly states that, well, the reason that we do that this is a good strategy, weaponizing humor, is that Russian officials and their influencers, enablers, and trolls, they cannot deal with being ridiculed because they're so serious and dull and whatnot. And so when you make fun of them, it, like, messes with their heads and stuff. And it's like, I mean, I know quite a lot of, I'm mentioned in this report as an example of one of these people, even though it's a libelous mischaracterization. That I know a lot of people who get targeted by NAFO. They're very, very big in many cases on self-mockery, and they don't take themselves overly seriously. So they've completely misjudged their adversaries. And in the process, like I mentioned, they often end up like, it's that scene in Mitchell and Webb where it's like, are we the baddies?
We the baddies,
yeah. It's like the Nazis, because their visceral, like, genocidal hatred of Russia is so extreme that they are frequently repulsing audiences to the extent of making them ask if they're supporting the wrong side. For instance, just really quickly, like there was I think it was like the start of last year, there was like a Russian tourist who was eaten by a shark on the coast of Egypt, and they were all, the NAFO lot thought this was absolutely hilarious and were mocking the fact that his children were now orphans and all this other stuff, and it's just like, to the average decent person, it just looks appalling.
Yeah, so I agree with that. It's complicated. What was I going to butt in with before? I saw an example of Ukrainian families complaining that NAFO people were, dropping saluting fellas, like in the tweets about, oh, my husband died or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's insensitive. Like that crosses a line. So the shark thing, like all of these, like the worst thing about defending like freedom of speech for jokes is you always have to defend the worst things.
Yeah.
Like and it's all about context, like, and if the joke's actually funny and stuff like that, like but don't do it to the children who just lost their dad.
Well, it's just, I mean, this is the thing as well, is that like I could kind of sense that, that like, I mean, I would never see this from a free speech like point of view. I would never say that what they're doing should be banned, or that there is like something, think of the think of the children, proverbially, like, but I do, I mean, if nothing else, the fact that they do this is a testament to the power of free speech, because like people end up rejecting them. It's the same with like Holocaust denial, where it's like, well, you are free to deny the Holocaust because you are free to destroy all of your credibility, on every conceivable subject. So it's like, I think, and I know this is another thing as well, is that I think that quite a lot of people have gotten very annoyed or very aggrieved and insulted by what NAFO does. Hilariously, they don't like it when you block them and complain about it and state, well, the block function should be removed. Like several NAFO people have openly advocated for this. So it's like, it takes 2 seconds, block them, ignore them, and it actually upsets them more than they could ever upset you, because they are driven by the need for attention and the belief that they are like really upsetting you. So show them that you don't give a shit, actually.
We have a similar thing here, like in the comic book world, where people wear their blocks as badges of honor or whatever. So they would be cheering, like, "Oh, look, Kit blocked me," like, and put up a picture of it. They'd all high five over that. What I was gonna say is that I've seen NAFO be accused of being racist and misogynist and homophobic and stuff. And those are the same things that they say about me, like to silence me or whatever. And I've seen it said that the founder of NAFO, I know his name's not Camille, it's like that, but I'm going to call him that because it rhymes with Jamila Jamil, like, and that's how I've remembered it in my brain. It's just the next letter of the alphabet, like he's a brother or something. And so when the whole Ukraine-Russia thing kicked off and they were talking about denazification, this world that we live in now, like, is another example of why it's so bad. is that now when I hear this person is a Nazi, my default response is they're probably not a Nazi. Do you know what I mean? Like, because of the way that the word has been like weakened. And you know, people call me a Nazi, like, and I'm very obviously a communist. Like, just they're dumb. And you know, so that's a bit dodgy. That it's funded. It's started by a guy who people say is a Nazi, who recently received the Lithuanian Cross or something for his contributions to the war effort. Like, it's crazy. Like that you can meme yourself into that kind of position. So it's weird to me, like when I look across at these NAFO people who are doing like these offensive memes, like and you know, quote unquote harassing people, like and you know, doing targeted campaigns, and like I mentioned the Article 5 thing where they summon each other, like that when they're doing it against an enemy that is approved like by the state, like that behavior is applauded. Like whereas, you know, if we were to do that for our own ambitions or whatever that were against the state in some way, you know, we'd be punished for it, like outright, or at least cancel cultured for it. Like,
I mean, I think like one of the most remarkable, and this is a point that I made in an interview with Politico when we were reporting on Paul Mason's email, which is that like the CIA and MI6 and GCHQ and the NSA all conduct wide-ranging hacking attacks on kind of target countries and individuals, right? And then they get panded straight to Western journalists or released via like cutouts, like distributed denial of secrets. And then they get reported on. And the journalists who write these stories win awards. And then like in one of the reasons that I got, or the main reason I got stopped by British counter-terror police was that we are accused, Grey Zone, of having reported on hacked information that was hacked by the FSB and or the GRU, right, Russian intelligence. And it's like, well, I mean, no concrete evidence has ever emerged to suggest this is the case. But like, even assuming that's true, and I don't think it is actually, like the Washington Post hit job on Wyatt Reed, an editor at Grey Zone, who is very much an independent journalist, has done some really, really great work on Latin America and West Asia. It started out by stating hacked documents show that Reed received freelance payments for work for Press TV, which is the Iran state news channel. And so it's like, well, when the hacking is exposing how people like Wyatt have in the past as a freelance journalist done work for state media, then it's fine. And we don't need to question whether the material has been faked or altered or who did the hacking and why. But when it's the dog whistle claim of like, well, this is Russian hacking comes up, the entire media doesn't go near it because reasons.
And that's a technique that we saw them expertly deploy on Hunter Biden's laptop as well.
Yeah.
It's a double standard, and like that's what angers me the most about it, like the hypocrisy of it, like but yeah, so for me, when I see them getting away with this, like not getting countdown-culled or whatever, like there's no repercussions for this kind of behavior. To me, it's obvious that they're being supported, like when they're being championed by world leaders and military generals and stuff. Like, you know, it glows really hard, and like you can see it from space. Like, feels really obvious to me. I have compiled a list, I think. Oh yeah, so this is quote unquote famous fellas, of people who are part of the establishment, who are also part of this online troll group, apparently. So this is the Prime Minister of Latvia, I think. One of them, I can't remember.
Yeah, no, Estonia, I think.
Estonia. Wherever they held the meeting, it's the same place.
Yes.
Okay. Vilnius. That's
Lithuania, Vilnius, yeah.
So Adam Kinzinger, like a former Republican Party senator or something. Whatever it is. The American system's confusing. Just have like. Anyway, and he works for CNN. Like, so, he has a direct tie into the media and stuff. This guy, John Cipher, like a former CIA
guy,
but they also say that you're never not a CIA agent.
Well, once CIA, always CIA. Yeah, I mean, it's like I do. Like, John Cipher is like, this guy is like absolutely batshit, and he previously endorsed the veracity of the Steele dossier. There was a friend of mine called Lily Lynch who wrote an excellent article about the exploitation of humanitarianism for the purposes of war by NATO, and then he left us some really threatening comment, which he subsequently deleted because he's a coward. But he has also claimed that the reason his hair is white is not because he's very old, but the Russians did it while he was in Moscow.
Yeah, well, they got him with the old hair whitening gun.
Yeah, the hair whitening ray gun, which is a uniquely Russian,
it's like a Havana syndrome or something all over again.
Yeah, having no hair syndrome.
Well, they did try and remove Castro's beard, don't it? Like, that's a
that's true. That's true.
Like, that's funny. This is another big name journalist. Apparently, I've never heard of him, but apparently he is. This guy, Paul Massaro, works for the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. Just an American NGO, I guess. I don't know if they're even connected. Point is, that these are people in high positions, and they're endorsing this group, and I find it's impossible for me to not look at this in terms of my comic book group, and this is the equivalent of Tucker Carlson shouting out Comicsgate or whatever. It doesn't make sense. It's never going to happen. Do you know what I mean? Unless it was being organized. Billy says there's an urban rumor that presidents in the US' hair turned white during holding office after seeing evidence of all the conspiracy and wrongdoing evidence. But
yeah.
What we got next? Oh, so they get a lot of credit for fundraising, for the Ukrainian war effort. What happens is you donate some money to one of these groups, and they will make you a fella. And you can see, look how desirable they are. This is what makes me the most annoyed about NAFO in particular, is that it's not funny. That if it was there's a cartoonist called Stone Toss, right? And I often say that he's the most influential political cartoonist in the world. He's got this real ability to present his argument inside your reality and make you see it in a different way and be like, oh shit, he got me. The there's a common one. The one that springs to my mind is there's like a communist guy, and he says, "Oh, I support the working class," and then some Trumpist like trucker tries to shake his hand, and he's like, "Ugh, disgusting," or whatever. And that cuts right to the problem of American communists and liberals and stuff. Like they talk about like class solidarity, but they don't really believe it. They believe in the basket of deplorables and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But so what's interesting about this, the money that you donate goes to Georgian Legion, which is, by my count, the third most famous legion in Ukraine after the Azov battalion, and then what the internet calls the Reddit tranny battalion, like that's over there as well. But these guys should probably be more famous. They're like accused of committing like war crimes and stuff.
Yeah.
But
they're like, Georgian Legion. My dear friend Alex Rubenstein, with whom I run Active Measures, is he's done some absolutely incredible work on NAFO and the Georgian Legion for Grey Zone. There are a number of videos quite early on in the proxy war, like that are absolutely horrendous, of Georgian Legion executing prisoners of war. That like often who will like have their hands and arms bound, and they just shoot them in the head or slit their throats and stuff. Like their founder, who used to be the bodyguard of Mikhail Saakashvili, who's this US puppet in Georgia, has openly stated that we don't take prisoners. Like any soldier we capture, we're going to execute, which is like a very serious war crime. And then you see him meeting with all of these like US legislators in DC, and then you have this whole fundraising operation via NAFO, which is quite clearly concerned with getting the money which they couldn't get from other official sources because of their avowedly criminal nature. And it's just like and then they have all these fucking cartoon Doge emoji. Profile pictures. It's really macabre. Like there's something like disturbing about like, oh yeah, we're going to be like really funny, like to try and hurt Russia by supporting this this absolutely horrendous paramilitary unit.
I mean, I can understand like the idea in principle of memeing the war or whatever. Like there is merit in that. There's reasons that countries invest millions and billions of dollars into propaganda. Like it could be good, but it's not good. Like this is the humor of like some meathead CIA agent, who doesn't like. They've looked at Pepe the Frog and thought, let's do that.
Yeah. It's kind of like early 2000s, like in something rotten and like 4chan level, like trolling, and they clearly think it's like really sophisticated and funny and clever.
It's not funny. That's the problem. No. So that I want to move into this section. So on YouTube, there's a popular format that people do. Try not to laugh.
Yes.
So we're going to call this section the Try to Laugh Challenge. We're just going to look at some really bad.
Brilliant.
So
very good.
Show you the type of thing we're going to do. That's blank. That's a good start. So this is your classic Doge bonk, but you've added nothing to it. It's terrible. And Vatnik they use as a slur in it for like someone that they deem as pro-Russian, regardless of whether they are. I don't even understand on what level this is supposed to be like a joke. It's just stupid. And not even absurdly stupid, in a Dadaist kind of a way or something. It's just dumb. Oh, is that all that I had? Hang on. I'm sure there was one. Oh, yeah, that one's in the wrong place. That's why I'm confused. Okay. All right. Let's carry on. This one, we've had one offensive, yes, but what about second offensive? I think that's not a joke. Like, that's just you putting a dog next to a picture of Zelensky. Like, it's.
Yeah. I mean, this is another thing as well that like I mentioned this in my article, but it's like you got to bear in mind that in terms of, as I mentioned before, like manufacturing consent for keeping the proxy war going. Another aspect of this really not being of what they do really not being funny at all, right? Is that the NAFO people were sharing all of these memes of like a leopard big cat chasing away the Russian soldiers or orcs, like Russian soldiers, and promoting a beach party for fellas in Crimea that summer, and all this. This was into the start of 2023. This was in advance of the much vaunted counteroffensive, which some sources claimed was going to like rewrite military history because it was going to be so brilliant, and the Ukrainians are just so wonderful. And then like fast forward to the actual counteroffensive, and like as many as 150,000 people got killed, or at least were crippled for life, in return for a quarter of a percentage point of the territory occupied by Russia in the initial phase of the invasion. And it's like they were among a large number of people who were encouraging, including Western journalists and think tank pundits, who were encouraging Ukraine to do this, despite the fact the US knew very well they weren't ready to do it. Like they didn't have like the requisite vehicles and armor and an air force to pull it off. And then, yeah, it was a complete and utter disaster. And like, we don't hear much about that. We do hear about, I mean, there was a video produced by the Daily Telegraph where they claimed that, well, if I was a Russian conscript in a trench in Ukraine waiting for the tsunami of Ukraine's counteroffensive to wash over me, I would find that Budanov smirks in his tweets terrifying. I would find the memes being posted like really intimidating. And these people actually genuinely believe this. It's a complete and utter nonsense, but they truly believe it.
Yeah. And you can just like turn off your phone and it like
yes.
It's the we don't need anti-air defense. Just turn off your phone. Like
yeah, and it's just I mean, this is the thing as well, is that another reason this is frightening is because it's been reported that the Pentagon planners who were behind this counteroffensive strategy, they knew Kiev didn't have all the training and weapons that it needed, but they hoped that Ukrainian courage and resourcefulness would carry the day. What courage and resourcefulness versus tanks? Like it's just this kind of these fantasy narratives about yes, like Russian orcs versus these kind of superhuman Ukrainians. It was clearly believed and informed military strategy. And it's like, well, I mean, in the event that the West does get into a direct shooting war with Russia, which it seemed very, very keen to do, I mean, is that the level of planning going to be of a similar quality? Well, we'll just beat them because we will. It's just worrying.
Yeah, like there's a thing that I say on Twitter sometimes to aggravate Americans, which is that Americans haven't won a war since 1776.
Yeah. Well, the British won that anyway. But
you could just about argue all of those. But the point that I'm getting to is that the Americans in this case believe. I saw President Biden the other day laughing at the idea of the government being overthrown by assault rifles, and he said you need F-16s or whatever to do it. And history has repeatedly shown, whether it's the Taliban or the Viet Cong or whatever, like that. America keeps losing to this outgunned courage or whatever that they're hoping the Ukrainians have.
Yeah. Well, it all just doesn't really bode well, and I mean that kind of level of magical thinking was very clear in other areas where, like, yes, again, according to NAFO memes, all of the orcs were going to be really scared of the Leopard tanks, and then a significant component of the thinking of the Pentagon's thinking behind the counteroffensive was, yeah, well, the Russians will just run away, so then we can. We're not going. We can move people and material and other things into the war zone without any risk of being shot at or targeted by artillery. It is complete and utter fantasy. It's like I've mentioned this before, but the British on podcasts, but the British have a strategy known as triumph of narrative, which they openly talk about this in public Ministry of Defense documents, where they talk about how winning at psychological warfare is the most important form of battle, because it means that you can win a war even if the physical contest cannot be won. And it's like, well, if you can convince people that this has been a complete disaster for Russia and that they're on their knees financially and they're losing like 1 million people a day, it's as good as you having achieved this. The sad reality, though, is that this fantasy will at some point hit reality and shatter. And if the reality that fantasy is being shattered by is like nuclear war, again, it's not very funny, is it?
It's hard to wring jokes out of a nuclear war.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I mean, there was a funny 80s comedy show called Whoops Apocalypse, which is about nuclear. I think it starred Rick Mail, I think, in it. In the opening kind of credits is someone standing in Leicester Square holding a sign saying "The end is nigh," being arrested under the Official Secrets Act. So, like, I mean, I guess you can, but I mean, not in an actual war, I guess.
And is there another one? Yeah, see, just more. It's lame. Like, there's not even a joke there. Like, make jokes if you're going to do it. This one, I must admit, did make me smirk because it's almost self-deprecating. Like,
yes.
And I'm still not totally convinced that this is an actual NAFO self-deprecating meme and not someone mocking NAFO from outside. Like,
yes,
I'm not totally sure on that one. I'm going to give them a smirk rating or something. But so the thing that I wanted to get to, I wanted to just circle back for a moment to the Reddit tranny battalion, as the internet calls it. So here, there's a whole subreddit, right? Like where you can go and you can get information on how to go and join the fight, like, and they help you set up your bank account, like, and show you what flights to get and all of this kind of stuff. And this blows my mind that this is allowed, like, just because of who the enemy is. Like, is this not in service of a foreign nation or whatever it was they hold you for? Can you imagine a world where someone like Anjem Chowdhury, like, is running r/Islamic State or whatever, like encouraging young people to go to fight in the jihad or whatever? Like, it would definitely be in jail. Like, it's crazy that this is allowed. Like, the people, it just blows my mind. And for me, this whole thing comes back basically to ISIS, like, that the West was caught with its pants down and it, like, on how well, like, they were able to manipulate the internet propaganda, like, with their well-edited videos and stuff. Like, they really had a good isn't the right word. The Islamic State understood how to manipulate the media and it, like, in a way that I haven't seen before or since. And they were able to influence young people, like, and change their minds to recruit fighters and stuff. And the security services here just weren't ready for that. And now they want their own version of that. Yeah, Jimmy Godfrey in the chat says, so the 77th Brigade is now the tip of the spear. Yes, so that's like the UK's the military intelligence group that's supposed to do internet stuff and
psychological warfare, and it's just like it's. I mean, I think that if there's a cause for any like kind of optimism in this conversation, it's the fact that like they're actually really shit at this because they are like they're psychopaths. So like they're going to try and be really funny and like harass people and dox them, which is a very serious issue. But like at the same time, they're just going to fail. Because they're not actually likable, endearing people at all.
And just not funny. If it was funny, then it could be effective. Like sure, like you're not gonna win a war like that, right? But you might be able to cut the heart of someone, like before he takes a shot or something. Like it's not a victory, but it's something. I don't know. Like it's powerful. Like you said, you wanna like create the narrative that we still won, even if we don't win.
Yeah. Well, if you can't win a real war, win an imaginary one.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. So that's basically all that I have prepared on NAFO. But there is another like topic that I wanted to run past you because I actually learned about this from you.
Yes.
And it's a perfect example of where our worlds intersect, which is this organization Comics for Syria, where the Foreign Office funded the production of anti-Assad comic books and cartoons and stuff in Syria. And what's interesting to me is the amounts of money that they were paying to these Syrian artists were equal to or greater than the amounts of money that you can get through the Arts Council, through the Department for Digital Media and Sport or whatever. It's very interesting that, because I believe that the people who run this country are trying to manipulate the culture through the media, and they do that in the way that they select finance grants and stuff. So if you want to get paid by the state to make a comic book, it has to be diverse and progressive, things like that. They're not going to fund anti-establishment voices. They're going to tell you to go and kick the shit out of them. So yeah, I just wondered if you had anything to add on Comics for Syria,
sure. I mean, it's I think that, this is something which I've been meaning to write about this for a very long time. But it's if you think, to give you an example, Sesame Street was conceived as a form of quote unquote riot control by CIA psychological warfare specialists, including people who worked on the MK Ultra mind control program. It's very well understood that cartoons and have a huge impact on children's minds and can be used for the purposes of quote unquote behavior change. Now, there was the Foreign Office and the CIA in Syria funded the creation of comic books and cartoons and films that were specifically for young audiences that were about trying to promote regime change. And I think what's really interesting is that there was this agency, this kind of MI6 cutout agency called ARC, that was, it made this film called Goal to Syria, in which the White Helmets, this fake British intelligence-run humanitarian group, are featured saving a child from rubble, and then the child grows up to win the deciding goal in the World Cup when they're older, for Syria. And then at the very start of the video, very clunkily, there's a character who says, first they hit us with chemical weapons, then they bombed us with barrel bombs, blah 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 blah. And it's like, at the same time, ARC was producing all of this propaganda to make Syrians scared of chemical weapons, while also, it seems, staging chemical weapons attacks. So, like, why would you want to do that? Insert that into a kid's comic, a kid's cartoon, like, very markedly, and it's almost like a kind of close up, very much like focus on this to audiences. And it's like, why would you want to do that unless you want to make children scared about chemical weapons attacks and think their government is doing it to them?
Yeah, it's shady, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what was interesting for me about that story in particular, about comics of Syria, was, that for a couple of years I've been banging on about how the government here at home was working, like, with the SJWs, like, and funding their cultural changes or whatever. And then along came this example of them doing the same thing, like, in a different country. Like, so we have, like, now we know that they have the blueprint in it, like, that, and if they'll do it there, like, why wouldn't they do it here? So.
Oh yeah, but it's just, on the subject of SJW stuff, like, we actually had something in forthcoming at the Grey Zone. I can't say too much about it, but it's like, it's very, very clear that, like, in recent years, like USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy, which are basically CIA funds, they've been promoting, quote unquote, wokery abroad. Like, they're very big on LGBTQ movements and that sort of thing as mechanisms of regime change in target countries. It's very, very clear that the NED's internal adoption of diversity and embrace of wokery has basically destroyed the organization. So it's like they create these tools of destabilization and chaos, and then it bounces back on them when it's actually applied to them.
Yeah, there's a delicious irony.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I was going to say, like, I should probably rush off quite soon. So, thanks so much for having me on, dear Commie Mark, and let's do it again.
Yeah, no, it's we're at the end now anyway. Like, so yes, thanks for coming. Like, it was a really very interesting chat. Like, and I think that there is, like, we could talk for like 10 hours or something. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's rare for me on the internet to find another voice that holds similar opinions to me on stuff. Like, I have a lot of people who come to my channel and they subscribe because they saw me, like, dunking on a thing that they hate, and then the next week they find me dunking on a thing that they love. So, like, so it's been nice to talk to, like, a left person that isn't like a sanctimonious twat or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're a rare breed. We're a rare breed, but I think that's hopefully changing.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay, thank you for coming. I'll let you get back to destabilizing the West or whatever.
Absolutely. Like, the battle's never quite won. But no, God bless you, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on, and speak soon, mate. Cheers.
Okay, thanks. Bye. Bye, everyone. That's the end. I don't even have Jan to do a poem, like, at the end.